In this video, I changed the oil pressure sensor in my '98 Jeep Cherokee XJ. So the oil pressure gauge doesn't work in my XJ. I get the check gauges light and the oil pressure gauge reads 0. In my case, the oil pressure sensor is bad, and I'm going to show you how to replace that. It's pretty easy. It only takes about a minute. The sensor is really easy to find. It's on the right side of the engine, next to the dipstick, and right above the oil filter. So first thing, you want to disconnect the sensor. You gotta be careful with this because there's a locking tab you gotta pull first to be able to disconnect the sensor. If you don't pull the locking tab, you'll probably end up breaking the connector. I'm just going to get the sensor turned around so you guys can see the locking tab. I'm usually not a fan of using crescent wrenches, but in this case I don't have much of a choice since I don't have a stubby wrench that's this size, and if I use a regular size wrench I just can't fit it in here, so I'm kind of stuck using the crescent wrench. And here's the little red locking tab. Just make sure that's in the unlocked position before you disconnect the connector. So it didn't take very much to loosen up the connector. Just turning it around to see the locking tab was enough to loosen it off, so I can just loosen it off now by hand. Here is the old sensor, and here's the shiny new sensor. And now thread the new sensor in and snug it up with a wrench. Now all that's left is to plug the new sensor in. And don't forget about that locking tab. Let's start it up and see if we're gonna get an oil pressure reading now on our gauge. You probably noticed that my oil pressure gauge is measured in bar rather than PSI. That's because I have a Canadian model XJ. So if you have a US XJ, it's probably gonna be PSI. This looks great. The oil pressure is reading just under 3 bar, and 1 bar is equal to 14.5 psi, so this is around 43 psi. And that's it for this video. If you found it helpful, please let me know in the comments, leave a like, and subscribe.